Welcome, friends. My name is Brian Benson, founder of InspireLink.com, and we are helping people achieve their dreams. And today we have somebody who helps people achieve their dreams every single day, Andy Robinson. He focuses on helping high-performing executives and business leaders maximize their influence and impact. He works with business owners, executive and senior leadership team members, and team leaders. Andy, thanks for being here today.
Great to be here, Brian. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So why don't you kind of go through your journey a little bit? Just how did you get into this world of helping the executive leaders?
Well, I kind of, like a lot of people, I kind of fell into it. It was an evolution into it. I graduated from Georgia Tech, got my master's degree there, went to work for the firm that was Coopers & Lybrand at the time, became PricewaterhouseCoopers. And I was a consultant with PricewaterhouseCoopers for 10 years. And one of my jobs, in addition to the work that I was doing, I was in the corporate finance practice there. I'm a CPA by background, a numbers person. And I did a lot of M&A due diligence and deal type work, corporate finance type work. But we were in an acquisition mode. The firm was in an acquisition mode during my last 4 or 5 years there. And I was asked to be a part of a team that was out looking for smaller firms that we could bring under the PricewaterhouseCoopers umbrella into our consulting practice. And as part of that process, we would interview business owners that ran small boutique kind of consulting practices. We did litigation support and M&A work and bankruptcy and turnaround consulting work. So we were looking for practices that specialized that. And I was on a team that did the due diligence, would go out and meet with the partners. And as we would bring people into the practice, I got involved in helping them to assimilate into the firm and provided coaching as a result of that. And I also was leading the team that was out looking for partnerships and small businesses that we could bring into the firm. So I was doing a combination of recruiting businesses and coaching people that came into the practice, and began doing more and more of that and less of the corporate finance work. The good thing about that is I enjoyed it. The bad thing about that was I was no longer a big revenue producer. I was kind of part of the overhead. So I convinced the firm to allow me to continue doing that, but to let me do that on the outside, let me make that what I do for a living. And the firm ended up retaining me to continue doing that work. So that was my first client, PricewaterhouseCoopers. I continued doing that for them, recruiting for them and onboarding and assimilating senior level, partner level individuals, men and women, into the practice. And my business kind of assimilated from there. I got involved in other clients. I got involved in recruiting partners with other big consulting firms, the Anderson Consultings of the world, Booz Allen. And again, part of the process, the main part of the process, was to stick with those individuals and help them become the best that they can be in the practice. And I moved away from recruiting. My wife took over the recruiting side of the business, and I became the person that continued to work with the executives that we placed into firms. And I built my practice around that. And that's what I'm continuing to do, and I've been doing now for 20 years.
Wow, that's impressive. So you basically became like an intrapreneur. You almost started your own business within
a big firm, and it was a way of doing something that was not risky. There was no capital investment. The firm basically invested in me by allowing me to take what I was doing outside and paid me a 1-year retainer to continue doing that. And all I had to do was perform, and I performed, and they continued to work with me. And then I expanded my client base from there. So it was a great way to do something that I didn't even know that I was going to love, 5 years before that I fell in love with, and I still love it today. The CPA, the number side of the business, gave me a great foundation because I can read financial statements, I understand the numbers, but that's not what I do now. But that talent and that skill still continues to serve me in working with business owners and business leaders.
Oh, I can only imagine. So, I mean, were you into, the self-improvement business or like ideas of it before? Were you reading like leadership books and stuff while you were still doing the?
Yeah, it's interesting. When I was brought into that practice of the firm back in the late 80s, I was brought in by a partner that had just come down from Philadelphia to Atlanta, and he was the most of all the partners I'd ever worked with, the most self-improvement focused partner I'd ever met. The very first thing that he did when he brought me into the practice is he said, I want you to do two things. I want you to go out to Dallas and spend a week at Zig Ziglar's Born to Win course, and I want you to come back and tell us about it because we may want to do that as a firm. And then I want you to pick an Outward Bound course, and I want you to bring that back to the firm and tell us if that might be something that we could bring to our leadership group. And he had at the time, but this was before DVDs and before MP3 players, he had a whole wall of cassettes from Brian Tracy, Tony Robbins, I mean a whole library of them. And he allowed any of us to check them out for as long as we wanted to. And before that, I read, but I really didn't get into self-improvement until I paired up with him. I mean, he was a mentor for me. He continued to be an executive coach and business coach of mine up until about 2 years ago, and then he's kind of backed away from the business. So he's always been there for me. I had an executive coach while I was at Coopers & Lybrand before him. So I've always been attuned to development and learning. He kind of escalated my interest in it, and it became something that was just part of who I was.
Who was one of those tapes or books that you read that was first really inspired you? Tony Robbins or Zig Ziglar? Or who was that
well,
one?
you know, I'm partial to Zig Ziglar because I was out there for a full week when he was this was back when he ran it. It was him before before his death. So he was there, and you know, I sat in a chair like this next to him. We're in a small room. We did a lot of breakout sessions with him. But I also did something similar with Stephen Covey. I've been to Brian Tracy live. I've been to Tony Robbins live. I don't know if there's anyone in particular that I'm most attached to, but Zig Ziglar kind of holds a special place in my heart. I liked his style. He kind of had a Baptist preacher kind of style that kind of resonated with me. And it was just common sense things that really made a difference, and things that I still think about.
Yeah,
today.
No, that's fantastic. So you went through the journey of doing the entrepreneur and grew that, and then you came down here and went out on your own. So how was that as that that turning point and that challenge between now almost entrepreneur to entrepreneur and building this out?
It was a challenge. We had built, when I left PricewaterhouseCoopers, I was in Atlanta. I grew up in Atlanta. I'm from Atlanta. That's home. And 1994, 93, we had built a recruiting business, and we had 15 people in Atlanta, and I was running the coaching side of the business. My wife was running the recruiting side of the business. But we had both gotten away from the core work, and we were managing people and leading people, and we decided that we wanted to do something different. So we took a vacation down to Orlando, went back home. We're in a restaurant one night, and the waiter at our table was talking about our trip and asked us if we'd ever been to Naples, and we said no. So we planned a trip down here and fell in love. We'd never been to Naples before, fell in love, and we got back to Atlanta, and we had these people working with us, great people, great team. But we knew that we were going to make a life change, we were going to have to change the way that we were doing business. So we basically let our people go, help them find other things, and moved to Naples in 99, and kind of rebuilt the practice here. I've got a lot of Southwest Florida clients now. I've still got clients all over the country that were clients of mine when I was in Atlanta. But we built the business, not as a business full of people, but almost as an individual practitioner. When we need extra work, we've got a relationship with strategic partners that we can bring in, whether it's a recruiting sourcing standpoint, whether it's needs for background checks. There's specialty coaches that I work with that I can bring in that are experts in their area, so if my client needs something, I can bring them in, but they're not employees. And that partnering model, that strategic alliance model, allows us to be lean, allows us to be flexible, and allows us to live the life that we wanted to live, which is why we moved to Naples. We wanted to move to some place that we could ultimately retire to and begin scaling back, and decide how many clients we wanted to work with.
Yeah.
My typical client load right now is 25 to 30, but as I move up in age, I'll just kind of let that attrition work naturally and kind of work down to a level where I'm enjoying more time not working.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's really interesting, and I want to talk a little bit about something that I think that most entrepreneurs and most people deal with, and I think that's the concept of fear of starting something new and starting a new adventure. And since it seems like you went through that because you had to kind of pretty much dissolve what you were doing and then move here totally fresh, not really knowing a lot. How did you get past that? You know, what were some of those things that you did to help you know that, okay, I'm confident enough, I know I can do this, and go in here and do this and build this lifestyle?
Well, I'm doing here what I was doing there. I'm just doing it in a little bit different way, and the clients are different. So I had I had a deep familiarity with the subject matter. So that allowed me to have the confidence to come down here and build the practice here. I also brought clients with me, so I had the cash flow and so forth there. It was that first step that I took, though, when I left PricewaterhouseCoopers in 1994 and went out on my own. Even though there was a funding mechanism, I was leaving this huge firm that I'd been a part of for 10 years. I was surrounded by extremely bright people. I mean, I was in charge of recruiting for that practice and recruiting at Wharton and Harvard and you know, the top schools in the country. So we attracted great people.
Yeah.
Leaving that and going out on my own and being away from that was something that was very difficult. So there was a fear factor. The partner that I mentioned was an executive mentor and coach of mine, and a lot of deep conversations, a lot of long walks with him. So having somebody that you can run your business model, run your idea behind, I put together a thoroughly researched business plan and got his input on it. So having somebody that you trust on the outside that you can go to, that can look at what you're putting together and can poke holes in it or play devil's advocate or give you some feedback on it so that you feel like it's been vetted out and you feel like you've got something that's achievable, because they'll push you on whether or not you can achieve that, and then to take the step and move forward. So it's moving forward with something new, but having the research, having somebody there that you trust has been an advisor and has helped you think through the things that you need to think through, the risks that you're about to embark on, so that you do the right things and make the right choices.
Is that the importance of really having a coach? I mean, why do you think people hire coaches?
For a lot of different reasons. I mean, I'm brought in for a number of different reasons. I mean, in every situation, when I'm asked to come in as an executive coach or a business coach, I'm already working with someone. I'm sitting across the desk from someone that's done really well. They've achieved a lot. They've moved up the corporate ladder, or they built a business and turned it into something successful. But there's something inside them that knows that there's more there, that there's more potential, or maybe their boss sees it in them and knows that there's more there, or maybe their boss has a bigger role in mind for them and knows that there may be some things holding them back. So they bring me in to bring awareness to their blind spots, the things that they may not recognize about themselves that are holding them back. They also bring me in to help them understand what their strengths are so that they can leverage those and use those to their advantage. They bring me in as an accountability partner. All of these people are extremely busy. I'm one more layer of 2 hours a week or 1 hour a week of time that they're going to spend talking to somebody. So they've got, and I give them homework and I give them things to do and things to try, new ways of looking at things. And then I'm there to hold them accountable. They know that 10 o'clock on Tuesday morning, Andy's going to call and he's going to ask me about the 3 things that I promised that I was going to get done this past week against that bigger plan, that action plan that we put together at the outset of the engagement. So an accountability partner, a thinking partner. A lot of CEOs, because of the level that they're at, there aren't people, or even CFOs, there aren't people in the organization that they can truly open up to and talk about anything, because you trust people, but there's only so much you want to tell people. And you know, opening up and being authentic about your weaknesses and so forth is a very difficult thing for high achievers to talk about.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah.
And to have someone that they trust as a coach that they can talk to about anything, and that will help them think through things in a processed way. I mean, I'm not there to tell my clients what to do. I'm there to have my clients think out loud so that they can figure out for themselves what to do by asking great questions and having them see things in a different way that allows them to make a better choice than they would have if they hadn't had someone to think the issue or problem through with.
Yeah, no, I was actually going to be one of my questions, but I was going to ask what the C-level, you know, employees kind of deal with most, but because that's who you work with. So what when you're dealing with these people and you say, you know, they're super smart and super successful, is that intimidating to you at all, or do you feel everybody just has issues and there's always something somebody's dealing with, and I know I can probably help them in one area or another?
I mean, maybe there's a bit of that because I've been doing it for a while. I mean, everybody has their blemishes, everybody has their weaknesses, everybody's a human. My clients want me there. I mean, so I feel embraced early on. I feel like they recognize that I can add some value. So I don't know that I'm intimidated. I'm usually honored to be there. I mean, I view myself as someone that's there to help them be the best that they can be. And my job is to serve them in that capacity and do the best that I can. And my clients don't sign up for a term. I mean, there's no commitment.
Right.
My clients pay me on a month-to-month basis. And if I can't demonstrate value every month, then they can let me go at any time. But most of my clients have been clients for 3, 5, 6, 8, 10 plus years. So maybe that first meeting is a little bit intimidating depending upon the level of the person. But again, it's a person there that really wants some help and is seeking help and is open to the process of coaching. Not everybody is open to the process of coaching. So I've got to vet that out early on and find out if this is someone that really wants my help and is open to the idea of being a coaching client.
Do you have an example of somebody who wasn't so into it and it felt, you know, what was some of their objections to that?
Yeah, I've had a handful of those over the years where, when I'm brought in by the company at the corporate level, and at the corporate level I may be working with 3 or 4 different executive team members, what I commit to them at the outset is if I get involved in someone and I believe early on that it's not going to work, that this person is not going to be open to the idea of coaching, I'm going to let you know so that nobody wastes money. And that's happened in 20 years, 4 or 5 times. I mean, usually the company has vetted them out or the person has done some research and usually they don't call me unless they're that type of person that can be coached. A person that can't be coached isn't going to pick up the phone and call a coach. But the ones that have been issues have typically been the ones where the company has mandated that you get a coach. Hey, John, you've got a problem. We've worked with you and we've done all that we can do. We need to bring in a coach to work with you. Well, at that point, I'm not a partner of theirs. I'm an extension of the management team.
Right.
And unless we can build trust real quickly, we don't typically get off to a quick start like I can with someone that embraces the process. So most of my clients that haven't been coachable have been clients where I've been mandated to come in to fix something, not to come in and increase the performance of someone that's already a high performer. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. You just mentioned something about, you know, building relationships, you know, pretty quickly, and that's, you know, you got to build rapport in your position because it's a very, you know, it's a, you know, confidential and accountability. I mean, you got to be the best friend, that person they can bounce things off of. What are some techniques and some things that you do to build rapport quickly with some of your clients?
Well, getting to know them through various means, and usually it's a process of getting to know them. It usually takes, I mean, the first 30 to 60 days is really developing that relationship, because people don't start opening up until you're well into the process. But there's a couple of tools that I use that really help me understand somebody quickly in a way that might take me months to understand them if I didn't use the tool. For example, with every client that I'm engaged with, we always do a DISC assessment, D-I-S-C. It's a common tool that's used in leadership and management, and it helps you understand their communication style and their work style. It literally takes them about 10 minutes to do the assessment. They get a 23-page report, and that gives me an insight on that person to help me understand how they like to communicate, how they don't like to communicate, what their work style is. Are they a high D, meaning they're direct and they're to the point, and if you come to them, you've got to be right up front with them and not beat around the bush? Or are they an I, an influencer that's a people person? They're a pleaser. They enjoy conversation. They're gregarious typically. Are they a C, compliant, analytical? You've got to prove it to me before I believe you. So understanding all of those things up front will help me adapt how I communicate with them from the outset, so that I'm communicating to them in a way that's reflective of their style. And because I'm doing that, we create a bond sooner than if I'm trying to figure that over a period of time.
Right. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, totally understanding someone's style and workflow. And you say this that can take a month or 2 months maybe?
Yeah, it depends upon the person, and it depends upon the situation. If it's a client where I'm working with other executive team members, I've probably had exposure to the client that they're bringing me in to work with, because they will have seen me, they will have been part of a 360 interview probably that I did for another team member, so they will have had some level of interaction with me. So in that situation, they know me a little bit already, and there's other team members that have expressed referral of me to them and what my style is, so there's that trust that's already kind of in the door. In a brand new situation, it takes a little bit longer, and this is an extremely confidential business, and you learn a lot of things about your clients, their business, not only their business, but their personal life, their family life. I mean, it's all out there, and I've got to demonstrate pretty quickly that they can talk to me about anything, and it's mannerisms, it's how you ask questions, it's what you say in response to what they say, not made up or not faking it, but being completely sincere and caring about the client. I mean, I want my client from day one to truly believe that I care about them, that I care about the relationship, that I care about them getting better. And I want that to come through in the questions that I ask and the conversations that I have, because it's truly how I feel, and it's truly what I believe. And I believe if I can demonstrate who I am through that conversation early on, we can develop trust early on.
What are some of the questions early on that you ask people?
Well, in addition to the assessment tools, I've got a questionnaire that I have my clients fill out ahead of time, and it's got some probing questions about who they are and where they want to go. But the initial conversations are learning about what they want to achieve, asking questions to help me understand what their goals are, not just their work goals, but their personal goals, their professional goals, what they're trying to achieve outside of work, what their interests are, what's held you back? What have been some of your significant struggles when you look back on your career? What are you struggling with right now? What do you wish you could change about yourself? What's the one thing that you know that if you'd started doing it, you did it consistently, would have the biggest impact on your work life? What is that thing, and why aren't you doing it? So it's asking probing questions to help you understand what their issues are, where they want to go, what their vision is for where they want to take their company, what their vision is for where they want to take their department or their business, so that they understand that you care and that you're working together in trying to achieve that together.
So finding some of the pain points, I guess.
Early pain points, or what can we solve together? And for some of these clients, it's the first time that they've truly talked about this.
Yeah,
with anybody.
I'm assuming.
With anybody.
Like you shared earlier, because they feel like they can't. Maybe.
They can't. Maybe they've spoken with their husband or wife. Maybe they've spoken with a buddy outside of work. But even that, even guys particular, don't open up to other guys about their issues. They don't open up to other guys about their problems.
It's hard.
It is hard.
Yeah.
And it's hard because you've got this ego persona that you don't want to let crack or in front of your friends.
Yeah.
But a coach is there in a very non-confrontational way to kind of pull that out of you. And once you open up that box, and once you get it open, it's like the box just opens wide, and they let clients let everything out, and that's what you want. You want to hear all of that. And for some people, that could be the second conversation. For some people, it may be 30 days into it. It is what it is, and I don't rush it. It's important that you don't rush it, but it is important that you get there relatively quickly, and if you can't get there, then you're not going to be successful. If you can't convince your clients that you truly care and that they can talk to you about anything, it's hard to be successful as a business coach. It's hard to be successful as an executive coach.
Yeah. Wow, that's some really great information.
I mean, my clients tell me things that they can't even tell their spouse about as it relates to work.
Yeah.
And know that they can trust me when they tell me, know that they can send me highly sensitive internal documents because we've signed a confidentiality agreement that we can talk about. And the more they're willing to share with me, the more that they're willing to let me in their head, to let me in their heart, the better I can help them. And once they realize that and see the value of that and see that it's making a difference and see that I'm changing now as a result of opening up and telling my coach about this, it feeds on itself. And that's why long-term relationships develop. You've got this person that you can talk to from a business perspective about anything. My job is I've got to understand my client's business pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I've got to understand their business model pretty quickly. I've got to understand the jargon of the business pretty quickly and the lingo. Because I came out of the consulting world, that was part of what I did.
Right.
When I was in a number of different industries when I was with PricewaterhouseCoopers. I did a lot of work in the life insurance and the financial services and banking industry, but I did a lot of other things too. But you've got to get your hands around the issues quickly. You've got to get your hands around understanding the business quickly and being able to speak the lingo and understanding what's important to them so that you can have a conversation that's meaningful.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. So you do a ton of research.
Right. And when I'm brought into a company and have worked with other team members, I've already got a legacy amount of information, but if it's a new client, a new situation, then it does require a lot of research. I did a good bit of work with the Ritz-Carlton locally here and thoroughly researched the industry as a part of that process, and did a lot of presentations to their leadership team here, and really came away from that experience understanding the hospitality industry in a way that I'd never had before.
Yeah.
But it puts you in a situation where you've got to get it. You've got to understand that they don't call them clients, they call them guests. At the Ritz-Carlton, they don't call them teammates, they call them ladies and gentlemen. So you've got to understand the lingo and use it in your conversation so that they believe that you believe and understand and care about who they are and where they are.
No, that makes a ton of sense. I totally, I go through some sort of like that process with these interviews and things. I have to understand what these people enjoy doing, or just research them, but so I can sort of understand what questions to ask, but similar to what you do.
And research in today's world is accommodated easier than it's ever been before.
Right.
I mean, as it relates to a person, LinkedIn, you can Google people and find all kinds of information. So it's much easier now, but it's still homework that you need to do, and it's really important that you go in understanding who that person is sitting across the desk from you or sitting next to you in a chair that first time, so that you can have an engaged conversation from the get-go.
Right.
Right?
I feel
they
like
expect you to know that.
Yeah, it builds that rapport.
It does.
Like you said, what we were talking about before.
Definitely.
Shows you cared that enough to put in to call them ladies and gentlemen.
Right.
To call them, guests.
Yes. Right.
And they can, relate to that very quickly. So I think that that's really important. Speaking of kind of hiring a coach or getting involved in any of this, taking action, I've done quite a few interviews now, and I've realized that most successful people take action. And getting into hiring a coach and things is taking action. What stops people from taking action?
Well, everybody's busy, and everybody's dealing with the whirlwind of work and what's going on around them. Most of my clients know what they need to do. I mean, they know the action that they need to take, and it's not because they don't want to take it. It's because they get caught up in something else that may seem more important, or certainly more urgent, not necessarily more important, but more urgent, and therefore they don't take action. Even though they have the intention to do it, they let other priorities pull them in different directions, and don't focus on the things that are important but aren't urgent. And because they aren't urgent, they're not devoting their time to them. I mean, it's the classic Stephen Covey quadrant that's up in the top right of things that are really important, like planning and like strategy sessions, and like time with your family, or time with your kids, or time with your best friends, or one-on-one time with your teammate or direct report. It's not urgent, but it's extremely important. So taking action, my clients are extremely action focused. They're extremely execution focused, every one of them. But not everybody's executing on all the things that they need to, because they're prioritizing things that are pulling them, and they're losing the focus on the things that are important. And part of what I do when I come in is I recalibrate their focus and have them step back and say, what are you not getting to that you know that you need to get to? I mean, if these are your goals and these are your tasks, tell me the goals that these 5 tasks align with. And if they're not aligning with those tasks or those goals, then why are you doing them? So that there's complete alignment. But I mean, you want to be able to look at your calendar and know that everything on your calendar aligns with something that I call your most valuable one of your most valuable activities. If it's not, then you've got to question why you're spending time on it. Now, we can't spend 100% of our time on our most valuable activities, but we've got to be in the 80% range, or else we're not going to perform at the level that we're capable of performing. So early on in the process, I help my executive clients understand what in their world at this time are their most valuable activities. And it's usually 5 or 6 things that they need to be spending their time on, that are going to add the greatest value to the company, that are going to allow them to achieve their goals, that makes them indispensable when they do it, meaning there's nobody else in the company that can do it like they do it. They can't delegate it, and it's something that's really important and something that they love to do.
That's a great information. I actually wrote that down because I think sometimes I definitely get off track, and when you're in the weeds of your own business, sometimes things can just drag you down and pull you out, or it gets distracting.
It's everybody's problem. I've never been into a brand new coaching situation where that is not an issue right from day one.
Yeah.
I mean, what we do early on in the process, we do an audit of their most valuable activities, and I have my clients actually track their time for a period of time, 2 or 3 weeks, against their most valuable activities. And what we usually find, and if they don't track it, then we approximate it through some very detailed discussions of what they do on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. But what I almost always find is that clients are spending 30 to 40% of their time on their most valuable activities and 60 to 70% of their time on their least valuable activities, which is a complete mismatch. It needs to be completely the other way around.
Yeah.
70 to 80 on those most valuable activities. And I find everybody is out of a line. Now, is it possible to sustain 100%? Absolutely not, because there's too many other things that you've got to do. But it is possible to sustain if you've got your workflow and your team assembled correctly. It's possible to sustain 75 to 80% of your time on your most valuable activities, but you've got to know what they are.
Right.
And then you've got to prioritize time spent on them by blocking your calendar or configuring your task management system so that you're focusing on them.
What's some techniques that we can build in awareness for that, to trigger that saying, say I know my most valuable activity or where I want to go is here, but the secretary calls me down, I got to start working on the bills, or make sure this is working, but it's like, I'm not growing my business. What's some things I can do so I can be like, this is not worth my time, or this is not the most important thing because I'm not spending that 70-80% on.
Well, there's a number of things that you can do. One thing that I strongly recommend to all of my clients, and you'd be surprised at how many people don't do it, is that you've got to, once a week, you've got to plan your week, and you've got to have a comprehensive weekly planning process. It's one of the foundational elements of David Allen's book, Getting Things Done, which I'm a huge fan of, is a weekly planning time, and it's carving out something that's like, Brian, it's an hour and a half if you do it right and you do it on a comprehensive basis. I do my weekly planning every Monday morning between 7:30 and 9 o'clock. It's a religion, it's a habit. I've got a checklist of things that I do every Monday as part of that. Even though I've been doing it for years, I still run through it. There's something gratifying about checking things off. It actually releases chemicals in your body that produce positive feelings. But it's reminding yourself of what your MVAs are. It's looking at all your goals once a week, your personal goals, your professional goals, your business performance goals, your relationship goals, and understanding what those goals are. It's looking at everything that's on your to-do list, everything, going through it all and deciding, once I've looked at my goals, understand my MVAs, what's important, what are the things that I need to get done this week, and then blocking time early in the week on your calendar for those important things that need to get done. It's the classic Stephen Covey big rocks, making sure that you get the big rocks in the jar first, in this case, the important things on your calendar. You can't fill up your calendar with big rocks. You've got to leave room for the pebbles and the little rocks and the sand, the least valuable activities. But you've got to get some time focused on your most valuable activities on your calendar, because in the end, when you look back on Friday, you are your calendar. Whatever your calendar says that you've done, that's who you are, and that's how you've decided to prioritize your time. Now, does that mean that you're going to get to all of those? No, but it does mean, and it does work this way if you do it correctly, it does mean that you get to it to a much more often and much more deeper than if you didn't do that process. So developing that habit will force you into a routine to get those important things on your calendar, and therefore a better chance of getting them done.
Do you think time to block that off and things, is that a common excuse for people?
You mean time to do the planning?
Yeah.
It's the number one excuse. Yeah. I don't have enough time. How am I going to have time to plan? Well, if the planning time is going to pay for itself exponentially over time. So you're actually going to save time. You're going to be more productive. You may not work less or spend less time at work, but the time at work that you do spend, you're going to spend more on your most valuable activity. So you're going to contribute more. You're going to generate more revenues. You're going to build a stronger team. You're going to build stronger relationships with clients. All of those are MBA kind of things. So in the end, you're going to be better off, and you're going to save time because you're not wasting it on the things that aren't driving business, that aren't building revenues, that aren't building relationships. But it is an investment of time. But what happens is, once my clients begin doing it and get in the habit of doing it, I've got this trick thing, or whatever you want, technique. Listen, you may not want to stick to it, but let's commit that for the next 30 days or 60 days, you're going to commit to a weekly planning process. And let's talk about what it is, and let's talk about what you're going to do. And your commitment is, after 30 days, after 60 days, you can decide whether or not you want to do it or not. But commit for 30 days. Spend the time on it. Do it right. Follow this process. And I've never had anybody that started it that didn't continue it, because you see the value. You understand what it does. I could not even imagine beginning a week not doing that, because I know what it does for me. I know the sense of control it gives me. Now, I may get into Tuesday and realize that things need to move around, but that's okay. That's part of life. But at least if there's 6 big rocks on my calendar and I get to 3 of them, it's better than getting to 1 or none if I hadn't done that, which I probably wouldn't have gotten to if I hadn't done it.
Wow, I'm definitely going to start doing that.
Well, and it's finding the best time to do that, Brian. I mean, for some of my clients are split into 3 categories of when they do it. I've got clients that do it on Friday afternoon because things are calmed down. If they're traveling, they're back in town or whatever. So Friday afternoon, 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock is a very common time. First thing Monday morning, early for some clients. Some clients come in at 6 o'clock, 6:30 and do it and get it done and out of the way. And then I've got clients that come in on a Saturday morning, or it's the very last thing that they do after the kids are in bed Sunday night. That's their weekly planning time. And they spend the hour and a half and get the week teed up, so that when they hit the office Monday, they feel like they're in control of their week.
Do you suggest one of those rocks are either the most important things, is it in their life, or do you think does it just vary with whoever it is? There could be one rock that's a business goal, another rock that's a relationship.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
It's a combination of MVAs, and when I say MVAs, most valuable activities, those apply to work. Okay, so your most valuable activity time blocks are going to be work focused.
Okay.
But when you do your weekly planning and you put the big rocks on your calendar, in addition to those MVA time blocks, you're putting exercise time. You're putting time with your wife or your husband. You're putting time with the kids, the baseball game, the soccer game, or whatever. You're putting it on your calendar. I will never put a meeting on my calendar where I don't have prep time also on my calendar. Meeting time for me is a red block on my calendar. Prep time for me is a yellow block. And it may not be right before the meeting. It may be a day before, but it's identifiable to the meeting. So it'll be prep for Brian at some point in time before we meet, so that it's on my calendar with a 30-minute block of time. So that
when did you prep for this meeting? Interview.
I had lunch today. I had a client meeting up until 12:30, and then Sushi Thai at Vanderbilt and Airport is a restaurant that I like to go to. So I sat in the restaurant. I pulled up your interview prep document, And I took out Evernote. I'm a huge Evernote fan, and I started making notes in Evernote of the kinds of things that I thought we might talk about today and some of the things that I wanted to make sure that we covered.
Mm-hmm.
And I spent a good hour, 15 minutes then, and then 30 minutes ahead of heading up here from my office, I went back to that and made some adjustments. So I spent about an hour and a half ahead of today.
Did you like this interview?
I think it's a
Brad?
great
What can I do better? I want to make this real. I always want to make my guests feel very comfortable and have fun when they're here, and to be able to share their stories and say what they really need to say. And I want to get to the good stuff. What can I do to be better? Or
Well, first of all, I've done plenty of these interviews where I got nothing from anybody. And you deal with that.
Mhm.
And you're going to have a more effective interview if you do what you did. And I thought you did an excellent job of what you did. There's no right and wrong questions, but the fact that you sat down and you wrote out some very insightful questions, you gave some possible structure to what the interview was going to look like and what I might expect. So I felt comfortable coming in here today, knowing the kinds of questions that might be asked. It really doesn't matter what they are. Those are all great questions. I don't
Okay.
know that you have any better questions. There's always other questions that you could ask, but that's a great set. And the fact that you
Thank you.
did that and you shared that with me made this process more comfortable, made me want to do it,
Great.
made me want to prepare for it because I had some structure to prepare for it.
Yeah.
And it really helped me kind of dial in the whole process today.
Cool. Well,
So great
good.
job
Thank
of
you.
doing
Yeah,
that.
thank you. Well, I really appreciate that. No, it's good to have that, that feedback, that outside feedback. I just want to make sure that, and I think, it's important to also make sure that you cover everything that you want to. So is there anything that you feel that you want to cover that we haven't exactly covered, or something that you feel is super important to the coaching process, or that someone could really do to better themselves? Any advice or something that you've learned along the way?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing that I see with respect to coaching clients, and one value of the process of coaching that I bring to the table that they could also do without a coach, but most people don't do without a coach, is this whole idea of understanding themselves better and really understanding not only what their strengths are, but what their blind spots and weaknesses are. So whatever you can do as an executive, whether you retain a coach or not, what is it that you're doing to get feedback? What is it that you're doing as a leader to get feedback from your team members, from your direct report, as to what you can do better? Are you asking the question, how can I be a better manager? What is it that I'm not doing? What are we not talking about? What questions do I need to ask you that I'm not asking you? How can our meetings be more effective? So that Marshall Goldsmith, who is a leading executive coach, wrote a book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And one of the elements in that book is a process that he refers to as feed forward. And feed forward is going into a conversation with a peer or a direct report where you're focused on forward process. So it's not, what have I done in the past that I need to fix, but what is it that I could start doing going forward? What is it that I could do better going forward? And then listening and not critiquing it, not defending it, but just listening it. Just because you listen and take it in doesn't mean that you have to do it. But if you start listening and and then start defending it, you're going to close them down and you're not going to get that complete feedback. So you want it all. You want them to say whatever it is that they can say, and listen and ask questions if you don't understand, and get it, and then look at that and say, is there something here that I really need to do something about? Is there an action here that I need to take? And be the kind of person that's open to that and willing to ask for that, because a lot of people, their ego gets in the way from allowing themselves and giving themselves permission to do that. You can improve yourself, but only if you understand what your weaknesses are. If you don't, then how are you going to get better? And that's one technique of understanding, developing self-awareness, so that you can create a plan and decide what you want to work on and what you want to get better at.
That's amazing advice, and I need to strive to do that a lot more. And since you work with, and you know, I know we're got a little bit of time left here, but just what can these C-level executives and things, is that part of like some of the things you have to try to get them to get over, is going to some other of their employees to ask them, how can I be better?
Yeah.
What's there something I can do to, you know, move this thing forward? I mean, criticism is not easy.
It's not easy.
I mean, you know.
Yeah, it's not easy. Well, I mentioned the tool that I use. Another tool that I use with every coaching client when we initiate the process is we do a 360 interview or 360 survey. So, and that might mean that they give me, in their world, their direct reports, if they have peers in the organization, if they've got someone above them in the organization, that person, and I'll have a conversation with all of those people and draw out information that helps me understand feedback that I can then share with my coaching client, because there is then that layer of a person between them and their boss that they might be more open to talking about. Now what I tell them is, I'm collecting this together and looking for patterns, and what I'm not doing is going back to John, my client, and saying, Sarah said this or Jim said that. I'm looking for collective information where there's patterns of issues or situations that my client needs to understand. So when people understand that you're not going to go back and tell your client that they said this, they're more open to it. That's one way of doing it. The second way of doing it, which I tend to use more often, is an online survey where it's completely anonymous. I have no idea who said what. Now, there's good and bad to both, but again, it's collecting information and feeding that information to my clients so that they can understand what others see. Because perspective is real. I mean, you can deny it if you want to, but it's real, and you can't ignore it. You've got to deal with it. You've got to understand it. You've got to act on it. But it's that initial process of getting it and hearing it sometimes for the first time and seeing it and reading it that for some clients, and a lot of clients, opens up the idea to make it easier to go back and ask the next time. Because the next time is not me. The next time in the process is them. And we talk about the process of how to do it. There's a book that's been written. There's a lot of books that have been written on giving feedback, but there haven't been a lot of books on how to receive feedback and to receive it and do something about it. I don't have the name of the book handy, but I'll make sure I get that to you after today. But it's a book that I recommend to my clients, because it helps them understand how to ask for, how to process, and then how to act on feedback and receive it in a way so that you can do something about it and not cut off the source and kind of continue to get it on an ongoing basis.
Wow. Yeah, I think just being open to accepting the feedback so you can become better, because once they start getting in, I mean, immediately when any kind of criticism comes in, everybody gets in defensive mode. So the whole point is to how can you not, and then how can you become better. So. Wow, you are a wealth of information, Andy. You are such a great guy. I recommend you to anybody. What's your website again? What's the best one to go to? Because I know you have a few.
Yeah, the best one to go to is executivesuccesspartners.com. We've just rebranded the website last year. In fact, it's going through another iteration right now. But the information on me and my background, that's the site that my blog is on. We put out a blog article once a week. I've got a newsletter that goes out to my clients. I call it the Inner Circle newsletter. It goes out to active and previous clients. There's the occasional outside non-client that I send it to, but that's part of what you get is you get a set of articles. I've written about 1,200 blog articles, and I've got, I don't know, a couple of hundred podcasts that I've done over the years.
Amazing.
And a lot of it doesn't go out of style, so I'll redistribute it or reuse it. But it's that writing that also forces me to stay current on the latest in leadership thinking and the latest in communication skills and so forth.
Yeah.
And reading is important. If I have to make one more point, again, it's amazing how many clients where I walk in the door and say, what are you reading? And they don't give me anything that's a development-focused reading thing or even a recent reading. So that's a big shortcoming that I see that is easy to fix. I mean, reading a book a month is so easy. Once you get into the habit of it and feel the value of it, it's transformational and it's life-changing.
What's the #1 book you would recommend in that situation?
Well, I happen to be rereading Good to Great right now.
Okay.
Jim Collins. I mean, I've read it 3 or 4 times. The reason that I'm rereading it is I'm doing a book discussion with a leadership team next month, and I'm rereading it again because we're going to really jump into it in a big way. I'm a huge John Maxwell fan. I've read just about everything that he's written, and there's always a John Maxwell on my credenza or somewhere nearby. So anything by John with respect to leadership is a great book.
Yeah, he's someone I definitely idolize and look to. He's great. I love his stuff. So
if I could recommend a current book that I'm reading that I just picked up because I just started listening to her podcast, the best book that I've read on habit development, and habits are such an important element of behavioral improvement. It's a book by Gretchen Rubin. The name escapes me because I just bought it and I just started reading it, but I've been listening to her podcast now for about a month and a half, and she talks about her book. But if you Google Gretchen Rubin, R-U-B-I-N, you'll see her book, and it's a book on developing habits and sustaining habits and getting into a routine of things that you don't have to think about that empower your goals. I mean, a habit is a routine that becomes automatic, that drives you forward, and you don't have to make the decision. You don't have to use that willpower element because it's a habit.
right.
You're not, so when it's a habit, it's sustaining itself, but it's driving you towards a goal, and it's a powerful technique when you can learn how to do that.
Yeah, it digs into the subconscious mind sort of thing, where it's just like brushing your teeth. You probably don't really remember doing it, but it's something you do every day.
Right. And reading is a habit, which is why I got to that. If you could develop a 30-minute reading habit, wherever that time is, wherever that energy time is, where you can devote 30 minutes to reading, and it's a huge habit to develop, and it's a great tool from a learning perspective.
Awesome. Well, that's going to be one of my rocks then, I think, making sure I read X amount of hours a week. I don't know what it'll be, but I think that's awesome. That's fantastic. Well, your information, I mean, like I said, wealth of knowledge. You have so much to offer. You're really great. I really admire you. I look to you as, as a mentor and somebody who can, who will help me along in my journey as well. So thank you so much for your time, Andy.
Well, thank you. This has been great.
Awesome. Well, we'll look forward to having you back hopefully soon.
I'll be glad to come back anytime, Brian. Thank you.
Great.
Enjoyed it.
Thanks so much.
Okay, thanks.